Today, we're going to talk about a truly revolutionary idea from an economist named Edmund Phelps. See, he took a core belief about how economies work, and he just shattered it. And by doing that, he basically rewrote the entire rulebook for governments and central banks. So let's dive in. For decades, this was one of the central promises of modern economics. Can a government get more people working if it's willing to just live with a little more inflation? And for a really long time, the answer seemed to be a clear yes. Policymakers thought they'd found a simple, reliable lever, almost like a master switch to perfectly tune the economy.
Now, to really get why Phelps's work was such a bombshell, we have to understand the world he was arguing against. And that world was built on a beautifully simple and very appealing idea. It was called the Phillips curve. And honestly, it was treated almost like a law of physics. The data looked pretty clear. There was this stable, predictable trade-off. If you wanted to create more jobs and lower unemployment, all you had to do was accept a bit more inflation. It was like an economic menu for politicians. Yes, we'll have the 4% unemployment, please, with a side of 3% inflation.
And look, this wasn't some minor academic finding. The feeling among economists at the time is described as euphoria, like they had harnessed atomic power. I mean, they really believed they had finally figured out how to master the economic machine. But one economist, Edmund Phelps, saw a ghost in that machine. Phelps looked at this tidy, mechanical Phillips curve and said, wait a minute, you're missing the most important ingredient of all. And what was that ingredient? It was people, us, and more specifically, what we expect is going to happen next. This slide just captures the whole shift perfectly. On the left, you've got that old view, the economy is a simple machine, there's a fixed curve, and policymakers just pick a spot on it. But Phelps's view on the right was so different. He said, no, the economy isn't a machine. It's made of people who think and learn and adapt. The curve itself moves because we, the players in this economic game, change our behavior once we figure out the government strategy. And this right here is the heart of his argument. Phelps was basically saying, you can't just look at a chart of data points and call it a law. You have to provide what economists call microfoundations. You have to explain why individuals and businesses are making the decisions they do. For Phelps, just looking at a correlation wasn't good enough. You had to understand the human behavior behind it. And this is really where Phelps did his most incredible work. He didn't just stand up and say, hey, expectations matter. He actually built the models to show exactly how they matter. You could really say his entire career was about this one massive project. To stop treating people like simple cogs in a machine, and to start modeling them as they really are. Making decisions with incomplete information, forming expectations to try and fill in the gaps, and learning from their mistakes over time. Okay, so here's how his logic works. Let's just walk through the cycle. First, the government creates some surprise inflation. A local business owner sees the prices for her products going up and thinks, wow, business is booming. So what does she do? She hires more people to keep up with what she thinks is higher demand. But that magic trick only works for a little while. Pretty soon, her workers realize, hey, my paycheck doesn't buy as much as it used to, so they demand a raise. And as soon as that happens, the business's extra profit evaporates, and so does the reason to keep those extra workers on staff. You end up right back where you started with unemployment, but now everybody is stuck with higher inflation. This whole chain reaction, it leads to a really powerful and kind of sobering conclusion, one that completely reshaped all of modern economics. Whoa, okay, don't get scared by the equation on screen. You don't need to be a math whiz. The only thing you need to notice is that little e next to the pie. That e stands for expected. By adding expected inflation right into the main model, Phelps made it official. What we think is going to happen in the future is a massive part of what actually happens today. And yeah, that equation connects all these key ideas we've been talking about. The actual inflation rate, what people expect it to be, the unemployment rate today, and the real star of the show, that little U star, the natural rate of unemployment. And this is the central concept. The natural rate isn't zero unemployment. It's the baseline level that's determined by real structural things in the economy. Like, how well do workers' skills actually match the jobs that are available? Or how easy is it for someone to find a new job? The reason it's natural is because you can't just wish it away with clever monetary policy. Think of it like a powerful economic anchor. You can pull away from it for a little while with a surprise, but as soon as people catch on and their expectations adjust, the economy snaps right back to it. All right, let's put this all together and see it in action. Here's the big reveal. In the short run, as long as policymakers can keep surprising people, the old trade-off kind of seems to work. You see this classic downward sloping curve here. You can get a little less unemployment by accepting a little more inflation. And that, right there, is the great temptation. But, and this is the absolute genius of the insight, the second people start to expect that higher inflation, the whole game changes. The entire curve, as you can see, shifts upward. Now, just to get back to the same level of unemployment you had before, you suddenly need an even higher rate of inflation. The deal just got a whole lot worse. And here's the final punchline. In the long run, after everyone's expectations have fully adjusted to reality, there is no trade-off between inflation and unemployment. None. Zero. The Phillips curve becomes a vertical line, anchored right at that natural rate of unemployment. Policymakers can try to create all the inflation they want, but they cannot permanently buy a lower unemployment rate. All they'll get for their trouble is an economy with spiraling, out-of-control inflation. So what's the legacy of this powerful, once radical idea? Well, it's not just sitting in some dusty old textbooks. It is the absolute foundation of our entire modern economic policy. For completely changing how we understand the macroeconomy, Edmund Phelps was, of course, awarded the Nobel Prize in 2006. His work gave us the crucial Microfoundations that made the natural rate idea not just a cool theory, but an analytical necessity. And you know what? The real world proved him right in the most dramatic way possible. In the 1970s, countries all over the world got hit with stagflation. That's high inflation and high unemployment happening at the same time, something the old Phillips curve said was impossible. That experience cemented Phelps's view, and ever since the 1980s, all of modern central banking has been built on his foundation. So here's why this really matters. The next time you hear a central banker on the news talking about their credibility or how important it is to anchor inflation expectations, you'll know exactly what they're talking about. They aren't just using fancy jargon. They're operating directly from the playbook that Edmund Phelps wrote more than 50 years ago. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought. Phelps showed us that in economics, what we believe can literally create our reality. If what we all expect to happen actually changes what does happen, well, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other parts of our world are built not on concrete physical laws, but on the simple power of our shared beliefs?